This is Lightning Power Lunch on the Lightning Audio Network with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli.
I think we played good. I think we came out strong in the first. I think they had like a push in the second. I think we took like probably 3 penalties in the second, so it kind of slowed us down. But I think we came out in the third period strong, and we got the 2 big goals and a great win for us.
Is it too early for the great win in preseason? And I understand it because these young players are trying to make that impression. We talked about it. This is a big deal for them. I don't want to say it's their playoffs, but if you feel like you have a chance to make the NHL roster, this is a really big week. The next 2 weeks.
And for that player in particular, and that was Jacob Pelletier, who scored a late goal to tie the game. In case you couldn't tell from the kind of French-Canadian accent there, he is certainly Québécois, as they say.
That's right.
But, he is trying to make the NHL roster. He would fall
Yes.
into that category, and he's made a good case so far through 2 games.
How many? I'm putting you on the spot here. If you had to guess, and some of this is we just don't know how many they want to break camp with to start the season, but how many, in your opinion, partner, the way you've kind of looked at this legitimately, how many open forward spots are there? If like your spidey sense had to tell you.
Well, the Paul injury opens up,
Yes.
if not an extra spot on the roster, an extra role, right? Like
Correct.
somebody might have been on
Yeah.
the roster as an extra, and now they're going to be in the lineup. So I think you're probably looking at, and again, I'm not counting them here, I think you're probably looking at 12 that are set for sure. And maybe I'm wrong to include guys like Chafee and Geekie. Geekie himself said and has said, I'm taking nothing for granted.
Mm-hmm.
He got sent down last year. I understand that.
It's the right thing to say.
Me
but I agree with you.
personally, he's going to be on the opening night roster.
I agree
so
with you
if
on
you're
Chafee.
if you're allocating spots for Geekie and Chafee, unless I'm mistaken, I think you're at 12 or 13. So let's say maybe 1 to 2 spots at forward to make the team. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be slotted in
No.
the lineup.
You're
right
a
away.
spare part, and relatively
Yeah.
speaking,
Right.
to start the year. I tend to agree with you.
Well, if you're going to include Gonçalves in the top 6, let's count them. Let's
count him
kind
there.
of spell
I
it out.
agree with
So
you.
if we're going to
I
include
agree.
how they ran them, if you're going to
Yeah.
include Gonçalves in the top 6, you've got your top 6.
Yes.
Gord, Bjorkstrand, and Geekie was how they ran the third line at the beginning of camp, and then you have Chafee, Girgensons, and Pontus Holmberg. That's 12. I included Geekie and Chafee. So you could dress a lineup, assuming those 12 are healthy and ready to go at the start of the regular season schedule. That could be your forward unit of 12, which means that whoever else makes the team wouldn't necessarily be in the lineup. They might keep 13. They might keep 14. I don't think they're going to start the season with only 12 forwards, though. I think we're probably going to be looking at our roster of 23. Is that 14 and 7? Is that 13 and 8? Unclear. But not many spots, 1 to 2. But as we have said many times in the years that we have done the show together, Greg, as we do the show through training camp, it's not like, you're applying to college and if you don't get the acceptance letter, it's like, see you later, right? Or maybe you can apply to be a transfer student in 12 months.
Sure.
Like if you don't make the opening night roster, you might be up within a month.
I'm going to go to the branch. I'm going to go to the branch school and see if you can bring me in the
Well,
second
my
semester.
kids,
Right.
my kids just went through
That's
this
right.
process.
That's okay.
That's
Right.
on your horizon, my friend.
That's right. That's
but
right.
it's not like the die has been cast. That's why these preseason games, it's not only about making a case that you want to make the opening roster. It's making a case that, like, I'm NHL ready. There's no room for me now, but in a little bit, maybe there will be room for me. And when you make a decision about who to call up me, right? I mean, it's a team game.
It's a fair
and they want to
point.
support their teammates, but they also want to make a strong case to advocate for themselves.
I wonder how much of the decision, too, is if we're going to carry an extra forward or 2 to start the season, are you more inclined to make that a veteran-type player than a younger player who may be sitting, and you could go to them, and I'm giving you an example, let's say a Dylan Duke, and say, listen, you could make the team, and if you made the opening night roster, probably nobody would disagree with it. But I don't know if you're one of our 12 best at this point, and so you're probably a healthy scratch for a decent portion of the time you're up here. So in that instance, are you more inclined to take a Kachuk
Or a Peltier.
Or a Peltier, yeah. Peltier, who's a veteran, been there, done that a bit, and have the younger players, even though they may be a little bit more advanced, nothing left to accomplish as much in the AHL compared to last year, let them play there for a couple of months until something happens, and then they're thrust into the lineup rather than wait. In other words, they're playing, albeit at the AHL level, but would you rather have a younger guy play than sit at the NHL level to start the year? And are you more inclined to go with a little bit more of a veteran-laden group who would be considered your spare part?
That probably goes into the decision process, Greg, but I think more significant than that is just who played the best.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that's probably the element that's going to move the needle the most. If it's a tie, like if you're like, all right, a Kachuk type player, and I don't want to just say him, but somebody of that ilk, who's in their mid to late 20s with plenty of pro experience and some NHL experience, who can handle being a healthy scratch and it's not going to really affect their quote unquote development, versus a younger player who's maybe in his, we'll say second year pro, right? If it's a tie, then maybe it does come down to, all right, let's go with the veteran and let's let the younger player develop. But if the younger player has outperformed the more experienced player, pro player I'm talking about, I think that is going to be more of a determining factor. But we are not in management. We are not the ones making this decision. So maybe the point that you brought up does carry more weight than what I just gave it. But there's no question that, Peltier and Kachuk have showed very well in the first two games. I've seen some reports, and I don't mean to throw Eric under the bus, because I think Eric has been complimentary of Peltier, but I think I read Eric was like, Peltier was more impactful in the second game than the first game. But I actually liked him in both games. I mean, I think that he has shown that he can make plays in both games, and he competes hard. His size disadvantage, if we want to use that word, because he's not big, has not been a disadvantage to him. He's won his puck battles. He had a couple of great setups in the Carolina game, which was the first game. One to Kachuk, where Primo got over on a one-timer and made a really good save. I think the other one he set up Finley. I think he was the one who set up Finley right in front of the net, and Finley missed the net. So I've liked Peltier's game, and Kachuk has been noticeable, certainly, to the point that John Cooper went out of his way. When I say he went out of his way, Coop can talk about a handful of players. He can talk about no players, in his post game. He brought up Boris Kachuk. That was Coop's choice to bring him up. And he brought him up for a reason, because he felt he had a noticeable, impactful game. And he certainly did in last night's game too, which was a game in which it looked like the veterans for Nashville were going to, they clamped it down.
They did.
And grabbed control of that game in the second period. And it looked like they may run away with it. And they didn't. And I think it's a credit to the group the Lightning had that they were able to push back. It's not so much even that they came back, which was certainly great to see, but they pushed back, in a road rink. Admittedly, it wasn't full and it was preseason, but they were facing as close to an NHL roster. And I would make the argument, Greg, that two of the best Nashville players in the game last night were two prospects.
Yeah.
Now, maybe there was something to that. The NHL guys are
going through the motions a little bit.
Yeah, well, or at least they're trying, but they're not pressing it all the way to the floor. But Brady Martin had 2 goals, and I really noticed and liked Matthew Wood. And they were line mates, right? And, Wood had an assist on Martin's power play goal. So they were not NHLers, and they had an impactful game. Having said all of that, we've seen preseason games in the past where a younger roster that the Lightning field as the road team, they might take on a more experienced roster with NHLers as the home team, and it turns into a runaway. I think the game last year in Nashville was 6-0 Nashville, if I'm remembering right. This game could have gone that way, but it was really after the last TV timeout of the second period that the Lightning are like, all right, time to push back, and they were able to do it. They had no shots, I think, in the first almost 15 minutes of the second period. They finished with 8 in the second period. So it tells you that they did apply more pressure, and they were throwing pucks to the net, and they were making Onanen, who came in at the halfway point for Saros, make some saves. And I wouldn't say that they just like carried that into the third and dominated the third. They had to kill a couple of penalties in the third. It wasn't like they were just pressure. But it wasn't like Nashville was doing to them what the Preds had done for the first 15 minutes, let's say, of the second period. And that's not easily done. That is a credit to the group the Lightning threw out there last night, that they were able to accomplish that and kind of stop that flow of momentum and push back. And in doing so, they were able to score a couple of goals and tie the game.
Not a ton of surprises. Lightning made a few cuts today.
7 players. They're all going back to their junior/amateur teams. I say /amateur because Caleb Heil had a very impressive game.
He looked good,
night.
didn't he?
He's going to, that is a junior team, USHL.
Yeah.
All the other guys, I think, are going back to their Canadian Hockey League teams. We can give you the list. Everett Baldwin's going to St. John. He's going to spend a year there before he goes to Providence College. Ethan Zada, Niagara, OHL. Aiden Foster, Prince George, WHL. Jan Kalicic going back to Gatineau, where he played last year in the Q. Mentioned Heil playing in Madison. It's actually 8 players. Madison's in the USHL. I didn't realize that Marco Mignosa was going to go back. He's going back to junior as an overage because he's already 20. Sault Ste. Marie. Sam O'Reilly, and we can talk about his game last night. I thought he had a very impressive game. He's an impressive young player.
Does he look the part? He passes the eye test a little bit.
Well, I'll tell you what I liked about his game last night, because it was really the first time I'd had a chance to see him play, but he won a Memorial Cup in London last year. London, Ontario. I think most of our listeners know we're not sending him overseas to across the pond, but London, OHL, London. O'Reilly's going there. Caden Petrie is returning to the OHL Flint, and Grant Spada is back at Guelph. So a fair number of OHLers in there. There's a couple of Qs and a WHL, and then, of course, the goaltender Heil is returning to the USHL. So 8 players reassigned. And, when you factor in that there are a couple of guys who are basically like invites that may get a Syracuse contract, I don't think that they'd be getting into one of the games this weekend. A couple of players are hurt. We talked about them, like Hooten, Kurth, who was in the prospect tournament, is hurt and not playing. So, the number is getting down there a little bit, and we'll see what the Lightning decide to do as far as the lineup is concerned on Friday and on Saturday. So we thought Pontus Holmberg was going to be playing last night based on how they kind of ran the lines in the game group, honestly, yesterday morning. Holmberg was centering a line with Gonsalves and Bjorkstrand. But when we got to Nashville, it turned out Holmberg was not playing and Cooper Flinton was in. So because Flinton came in and Holmberg went out, they had to basically fill the top line center role. So Sam O'Reilly, was slated to center the line in which Cooper Flinton went with Abruzzese and Tristan Allard. That was going to be a line. Well, once Holmberg was not playing, they moved O'Reilly up to the line with Gonsalves and Bjorkstrand. And already, right off the bat, like, that is a little bit of a bar. It's kind of like, how's this guy going to do, right? With 2 guys. One's an NHLer. The other guy is basically an NHLer. Gonsalves has earned a spot. And I thought he slotted in really, really well. And it was noticeable at the beginning of the game where they had a power play right off the bat. And then they had another one shortly thereafter. And O'Reilly was on the unit with Bjorkstrand and Gonsalves, Peltier, and Radish, and they had a lot of chemistry. They were zipping the puck around. So offensively, like moving the puck around, going to areas, he was in front of the net, like very good instincts. But as we got into the game 5-on-5, the Lightning didn't really do much 5-on-5, even in the first period, and then certainly for much of the second. But what I noticed about O'Reilly was he was in the right spot. And again, I'm not watching, I'm following the puck. So I'm not always watching how players are playing and operating away from the puck. But when a Nashville player had the puck, like O'Reilly was in the way, O'Reilly was contesting the puck. O'Reilly was in a proper position to be able to battle. And I'm not sure every young player has those instincts. And he also didn't shy away from any of those battles. So I think the Lightning were attracted to what we heard was, a very high hockey IQ and a very good two-way player, like knows the game, which we hear that about a lot of players, particularly the players the Lightning are interested in, because that is a high priority for young players when they're looking at drafting or acquiring young players. But I thought O'Reilly's positioning and the way he kind of carried himself on the ice was notable for a young player in really preseason game number 2. I don't know how many preseason games he's played in because I don't know how many he got in for Edmonton last year. But this was the first one with the Lightning, and he looked kind of like the players that we were referring to yesterday who'd been pros for a while. Maybe that's the way of putting it.
Yeah.
Like he wasn't overwhelmed at all. He slotted right in. He did what was asked of him, even when, the team was swimming upstream and, they were back on their heels. He was part of that, right?
Right.
I mean, he couldn't single-handedly, reverse momentum, but he showed well beyond the fact that he scored a goal. He did okay on face-offs. I mean, he is a righty, so, down the road, the Lightning theoretically be adding a right-handed centerman, which will be very nice because they don't have a lot of those right now. But I was just impressed with, where he was on the ice. He didn't seem lost at all. And, you hear about the comparisons with Cirelli. I honestly don't really remember Cirelli when he was like coming up as maybe got into a preseason game before he turned pro and all of that. I more remember him when he got to the NHL.
Yeah.
And he was a few years older than O'Reilly is now when Cirelli got to the NHL. I think O'Reilly probably has room to grow into his body some more. He is not the biggest guy in the world. He's not the smallest guy in the world either. But I think that he can probably expect to get a little bit bigger as he gets older. And what I notice about Cirelli, I think Hagel shares this quality too. It's like that dog with a bone, mentality. I'm not sure I noticed that so much from O'Reilly last night, but that's putting a lot on a young player. I thought he had a great game. And then I thought it was the goal that he scored. I thought it was like a redirection off the goalie and then off him. I didn't see a lot of replays on it, and the replay, I saw one, and it wasn't very clear. It's kind of like the scoreboard camera, but both Eric and Ed in their game report had him tipping the puck, so I will defer to them, and if so, that was a very nice tip to score the Lightning's first goal.
Heck of a tip.
Yeah.
Sure. Matt says, beating the Preds with our prospects while they had mostly NHL feels real good. Yes, I know it's just the preseason, but gets me hopeful for the future. A lot of great talent in our prospects pool. Who impressed you the most? Kind of got into that a little bit. It's funny, that narrative, though, at least from Matt's perspective, but a lot of great talent in the Lightning system. And that may be the case. It's just the national perspective probably isn't that.
Well, they don't have a top 5 pick like this Brady Martin.
Right.
Braydon Martin is a blue chip prospect. He was the 5th overall pick last summer's draft, and he's a bigger guy. He knows where to go. He scored his 2 goals from right in front of the net. He has a great finish. The Lightning haven't been picking 5th overall, so they have to do it
That's a good thing.
in a slightly different way. Yeah, it is a good thing. Nashville had a horrible year last year. That's why the Predators picked 5th in last summer's draft. So, yeah, I think the national consensus is like looking for blue chip prospects and general depth. And the Lightning have not gotten very high marks in that regard. But, these are people who are looking on paper or writing on paper, typing on, a website and giving their opinion, and it's up to the Lightning players to disprove that theory. The other part that I think the Lightning should get very, very high marks. And I don't know that anyone really tries to like quantify this on these like lists of organizational depth and all of that, is there are very few teams in the NHL who I think develop players as well as the Lightning. So a player, that player is drafted, maybe the people that have been watching all of the amateur hockey, and they're like, okay, this guy slots as this sort of player, and he is, ranked here, and because we don't have him ranked as high as a lot of other players, he's with the Lightning, that drags down the Lightning's ranking. But what happens from the point that he is drafted until the point that maybe he actually joins the NHL team? What's happening in that part of the journey, right? When the Lightning's development team can work with a player, both the player taking the initiative to like take what they learn at the development camp in July and work on it, but also when they join the organization, and what Joel Bouchard and his staff is doing in Syracuse to teach them how to be pros. That is another like X factor.
Huge.
I think a lot of these websites that are doing their rankings are probably not taking into account.
There's almost 3 phases.
I don't want to speak for them, but I mean, that's my guess.
There's almost 3 phases you need to be solid to develop and have a consistently good team at the NHL level. You need to identify the talent. So that's your scouting department. You bring them in, and then you got to develop them. So now that gets into coaching. And then at the NHL level, you're just hoping it's a right fit. But think about just to get the consistent flow of good talent and good teams continuously. You need to hit on the first one, which is drafting well. Mm-hmm. And look, that can come in the form of identifying free agents too. It doesn't necessarily have to be you were a 6th-round pick.
Or trading for somebody who's already been drafted but hasn't turned pro, which is the case of O'Reilly.
For sure.
And Geekie, for that matter, who, he was a top pick. Not 5th overall, but the Lightning were in a position to draft Connor Geekie when he was eligible to be drafted.
And then you have to find the coaching to be able to get those guys to a place where they have been developed appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard to do because there are a lot of organizations that can't do it, that struggle with it, are inconsistent. And the Lightning, you're going to have misses. You're just not going to be great every single pick. Nobody expects you to be. But for the most part, I will say this. I think other GMs, when they look at the Lightning system, to some degree, I think you have to throw out pedigree. I didn't mean that to rhyme, but like if you pluck somebody from the Lightning system, I don't know, I feel like there's a little bit more credibility into what that player can provide going back because, the Lightning drafted him. So they must have seen, the Lightning have a great track record. They must have seen something in this kid. Maybe we can get something out of him as well. But if the Lightning took a flyer on him, that means he's got to have some tools, to work with. And I always think that's an interesting situation whenever the trade deadline pops up and people start discussing prospects. And they say, he gave this player who was a 5th-round pick back in 2022 back in return. Okay, but you know what? The Lightning have enough credibility around the league where they've turned 5th-rounders into pretty good players.
Mm-hmm.
And that always has to be part of the equation. Tampa Bay on X says, I still think Julian has to work on a trade for a physical vet defenseman. The bottom pairing isn't totally bad, but it still raises questions.
Well, isn't Lilleberg physical? I mean, I'm not trying to be contrarian here, but I mean, Emil Lilleberg is a young, physical, tough, growing NHL defenseman. By growing, I mean growing his game.
Yeah.
Unless Tampa Bay is suggesting finding like a veteran guy, like the Lightning found Bogosian, for example.
Right.
In 2020. We'll see. I mean, those sorts of players, if you're just, I shouldn't say just, but if you're looking for kind of a depth defenseman who has physicality,
Where's
Like,
Luke
I do
Shen?
think those
Where's
players.
Luke Shen?
Well, I mean, those players are available at the deadline. Luke Shen is a great example. Like, he got moved at the deadline last year.
Like,
I do want to mention
yeah, go ahead.
that we got a comment from a fan. Jared sent it along, and thank you to the fan. It was Thomas. Now, I don't know how to say your last name. I do know how to say Stahoviak's last name, but Thomas, I think it's Rosicki, but he told us about Stahoviak. He is a German national player, not a Polish one. He played in 2 World Cups, World Championships for Germany in 2023-24 and 24-25. In 23-24, he won the silver medal. I don't know what he means by World Cups. The World Championships are in the spring, so I don't quite understand which tournament you're referring to, Thomas. But I think that is where Brian Engblom would have seen him play. Because for sure, Germany has a team that competes in the World Championships. So Stahoviak was born in Poland, but has dual citizenship. He started playing in German youth teams in 2013. So thank you, Thomas, for the clarification. I was not aware that he had done that. I thought he was a Polish citizen only, and when he played, where Brian would have seen him at the World Championships, he would have played for Poland. Maybe Poland does have a team, but Germany for sure has a team, and according to that fan comment, that is where Stahoviak would have played, because he has dual citizenship. But his birthplace is Poland, and his name is for sure Polish, as opposed to German heritage. So
Our fan base is knowledgeable.
I don't know
Okay,
where.
Barbara?
I mean, people just know all the stuff, or maybe there's a way to look up all the stuff.
Probably a little bit
I
of
probably
both.
don't know how to look up all the stuff.
You can just Google.
Yeah, some of it I pick up because I hear it, and other
sure.
times I'm just using instinct. Like Brian told me he saw the player, so I'm like, all right. Well, the guy was born in Poland,
that
so I guess
resonated.
that's where Brian had seen him play.
That resonated with you.
Yeah,
For sure. Kobe, by the way, is going to be joining us here at 12:30.
great.
EB on YouTube says, "Go Bolts! Great to see our team of mostly younger players win." From Barclay on YouTube, future looks bright. From Code Res on YouTube, says he's a more talented Cirelli in his opinion. He's referring to O'Reilly, partner, when we were getting into that discussion.
That may be. That is probably based on watching this guy play in the OHL, which I have not done.
I haven't either.
I mean, Cirelli's got talent.
I
I would love to see, as much as they did damage last year shorthanded, Hagel and Cirelli,
Yeah.
both of them, like usually one setting up the other. I think they can produce even more shorthanded. As many chances as they get, if they had a slightly higher conversion rate, they would both be leading the NHL in shorthanded points.
I think that's fair. Let's get to our next guest. By the way, Braydon Coburn is part of the TV broadcast and will be on this Friday for the first one. You can watch Lightning games this year in Tampa Bay on the Spot Channel 66. You get this with an antenna on Spectrum, Frontier, and more. There are more coming too. For those outside of Tampa Bay, go to tampabaylightning.com to see where you can watch. You can also stream on the Lightning app on your phone or TV for just $66 a year. Braydon Coburn is with us. Kobe, great to be with you. Can't wait for all those TV appearances. I know you're excited to take that all in. It's really a great way to stay involved in the game, isn't it? Outside of playing, you get a chance up and close to see these teams and see the young Lightning players who we've been talking about over the first 2 preseason games here.
Well, Greg, I think you know as well as I do. I just love talking hockey, and I just love sharing my thoughts. And the greatest thing about this is that everyone's perspective is a little different, and I really think that getting the word out about how these games are going to be broadcast and how our fans, when they're not in the building, outside of listening to the radio with Mish on TV, can really digest this stuff and take it in. And I think they just done a fantastic job with being extremely creative with how the pregame show is going to go, the analysis. We have Brian and Dave in game, who are some of the best in the league, and with having Patty Maroon and Dave Anderchuk and Adam Hall, these guys they've been doing this for a long time. They're so great at it, sharing the perspective, passing on what they see in the game. which is different. And then Ryan Malone as well. Bugsy's going to be on there. I think all of our personalities are going to offer something different, and I think it'll be very engaging and really entertaining for people. And for me personally, I'm just I'm really jacked up because Paul Kennedy, he's going to steer the ship, and us boys we're going to really kind of have some fun with it.
Kobe, one of the things that we were talking about that we took out of last night's game was this younger group for the Lightning against a mostly NHL roster on the other side was able to kind of get punched in the face and then find a way to push back and get back into the game. Are we overstating that as a significant part? Like, what's your take on, these preseason games, or going into another team's building, you're facing mostly NHLers, and everything is going against you? How difficult is it to change the narrative of a game like that?
Well, I think for me, outside of the games, I think the games are important. Absolutely. The biggest thing for me is the impression you're going to make on management, and this is the chance for teams outside of the practices. So all these players outside of the players that were just drafted or invited to this training camp, they had a meeting with the management or their coaches at the end of the season, and they talked about ways that they want these players to improve. And it could be in anybody. It could have been Victor Hedman, and they're talking about, hey, Vic, we got to do certain things for next year. And at the developmental level, the guys in Syracuse, the player development guys, they're all talking about these players. So now they get a chance to really see if they've taken to heart what they've suggested throughout the summer, if they put the work in. And you can kind of get that impression from the fitness testing they do to the on-ice scrimmages and practices. But now you can get a chance to really take these guys and put them in an environment where they're going to compete against somebody that's also trying to do ultimately the same thing they're doing, is break down the door and win a spot or win a place in the hierarchy of call-ups, that you're going to be a contributor to the organization. So when you come in and you show that kind of resilience as a group, from a management standpoint, I'm sure these guys are sitting there and they're looking at individual players and they're thinking about, how does this player spot in at different times? And what can we use this guy as? And what kind of fortitude does this guy have? What kind of situations has this guy been in? And it gives these guys a really good opportunity. So when you see that, and it's going to happen during the year, there's going to be second periods, first periods, third periods, whenever it happens during the year for the Lightning, where, just as you said, they're going to get kicked in. They're going to get kicked in the teeth. They're going to get beat up a little bit like they did in the second period. Are they able to stick with it and understand that they didn't let the game get away from them? They held on for the third period, and ultimately, the goal of the whole game is to, whether it's in the shootout or in overtime or whatever. But at the end of the day, they got the win, and I thought that showed a lot of character by those young guys that were playing in the lineup. And it can be daunting. You're looking at a lineup where you've got a guy that's got over 500 goals, and Steven Stamkos, and Marchessault, Stanley Cup winner in his own right, Yossi, who's just a fantastic defenseman, and you're just like, holy man, these guys are so good. But ultimately, you just have to go out there and show your stuff and just play your game and show that, hey, maybe I can show them something that the Lightning are going to take notice of and really want in the future.
Kobe, how much stock do you put into preseason games when you start talking about guys who are trying to make the team not only in the top 12, maybe they're the 13th or 14th forward or the 7th or 8th defenseman? At what point, what are you looking at to signal, yeah, that guy looks like he's legitimately has a chance to make the team compared to maybe something else that he's not doing, but he's being somewhat productive?
Well, Greg, I think it's like a two-layer way you're looking at it. I think you're asking about maybe just like that guy that's trying to break the crust and really kind of come up into that organization. And I lived both of them. I lived as a young guy that was trying to come up and make my way through the Atlanta Thrashers organization, and also as a veteran player. And I think those two level of players look at preseason almost at a completely different aspect. As far as being a young guy coming up, it's very interesting. And certain players, just depending on kind of your predisposition of how you are, it's easy to get starstruck. It's easy to sit there and sit back and look and say, nah, it's Braden Point and Nikita Kucherov, and holy moly, like, what am I doing out here? And then it's another thing to just kind of have that self-belief and just being like, you know what, like I am just going to play my game. I'm going to do the things that you guys mention all the time. It was like, how are you going to get noticed? And what are you going to do? And how do I catch the eye of someone to think that maybe that is a position that I can first get my entry point into, and then I can show them that my game's got more to that. And it's just, I think it's preseason is an interesting kind of level of like that. I've been on teams where when I was in Philly, we had a bunch of preseason games, and then for whatever reason, the old Spectrum was there, and it was the last year of the Spectrum in Philadelphia, and they were going to tear it down. So the powers to be thought it would be a really good idea to have the Philadelphia Flyers play the Philadelphia Phantoms, our American League affiliate, and we got beat, and it was one of those things of the Flyer. I was like, oh my god, what had just happened? But you can also kind of understand the different layers of motivation. Those guys, they were thinking that like this is our chance to get noticed, and the chance for Paul Holmgren and the management team to see us play. Where I think the guys in the Flyers were like, man, let's just get through this. Let's stay healthy. Let's make sure we keep getting sharp. But we know that the real game started in the regular season. But it's an interesting kind of way to see how the motivation goes, and I think these teams, and especially the Lightning, they have an idea of where guys may be slotting in, and they want to see, is the job there for them to hold on to it, or are they trying to kind of see at certain points, and we never know when they might come, that injury might be there, and the next guy coming up is going to be the guy that we're going to need to fill that job.
Kobe, one thing Greg and I were kicking around in the first half hour was, basically forward 13 and potentially forward 14 that the Lightning may open the season with, guys that may not be in the lineup regularly, but will probably not just sit the whole time. If you put your GM's hat on, do you think it's maybe better to have a guy with more pro experience who's had some NHL experience, let's say a Kachuk or a Peltier, or a younger player who would benefit from maybe being at the NHL level, but is younger with less experience, let's say Finley or Duke? Do you think that there's an advantage or disadvantage for either type of player?
Well, it's a luxury that this team hasn't had. They've basically carried right up to there hasn't been many extra players sitting around for this team for a couple of years just because of the cap constraints. But I could maybe, I think it's dependent on players. I can speak from maybe my personal experience. And when I was coming up through Atlanta, I played the first 10 games, and then I kind of just hung around, and I was kind of in and out of the lineup a little bit. And I really don't believe for a young player, especially a first or second year pro, I think you need to keep that development going. And I think the Lightning have done that in the past. And I think they realize that one of their foundations and the pillars of this organization is how well their players do develop under the coaching staff and tutelage of the people that are running Syracuse. I think having the guys that maybe understand the game a little bit more, because as a young player, you have to remember all these guys are coming from junior programs where, hey, they're getting power play minutes, penalty kill minutes, they're playing top end minutes. And then to say, hey, we're maybe going to throw you in a game once a week. It is a major part of a hockey player it's hard to get over. And it's hard to kind of like turn that on just for once a week, even though you're around the players. I think the organization would probably, depending on the player, obviously, be better suited to have that guy be kind of developing his skills at the American League level, where he's playing 3 days a week or 4 days a week, whatever the schedule kind of comes in, and they have all those practice days and those development days. And we know that Barb Underhill, we know that the skating, the skills coaches are there consistently and constantly during the year, as opposed to maybe something where, we know how much the NHL team practices, and it's not a lot. If you're looking at 5-6 practices a month, you might be lucky. So the majority of the time you're sitting there in pregame skates, you're out there with 2 or 3 assistant coaches trying to get your reps. I just don't believe that's the best place to develop.
Kobe, a lot of people want to talk about the bottom pairing on defense, and who is that going to be? Crozier and Littleberg have played together. When they have played together, they've done well. We know Radish is going to have a say in all of this conversation. I think competition, we all agree, is a good thing. It's going to push people left and right. Do you have a kind of a preference who you'd like to see maybe start, go 6, and then maybe who that bonding pair would be? Or do you feel like that's just going to be an evolving situation as well?
Absolutely, I think it's an evolving situation, and I think for me, I think one of the important things, and we see it with McDonough and Chernak, is when you have a defensive partner that you have chemistry with, it all of a sudden it changes the equation. No longer do you have 1 + 1 = 2. You have 1 + 1 = 3 because the chemistry you have adds another element to how that pairing really is effective. And so I think kind of having that in mind, it really kind of helps dictate who that pairing might be. But
Right.
Greg, I'm with you all the way. I think having that competition is always healthy in the lineup. And these guys I know they feel it. As being a player that's, in the last couple of years of my career, you're kind of in that bottom pairing range. You really kind of push yourself to make sure you seize those minutes, because all these guys, they want to. It's not like some other sports. Like, you want to be in the lineup every single night,
Sure.
regardless of what's going on. There's nobody that's screaming for maintenance days in the NHL.
Kobe, we've taken a lot of comments in the early days of camp about the Lightning's power play, the number one unit, fueled by Kucherov's comments in media day, where he basically was like, I want to be on the right side. I'm paraphrasing here. I'm unkuchifying his coochiness. But, he's like, I want to be at the right circle, and I want a right-hander at the left circle, right? I understand it's not going to be Stamkos, but if you put a lefty at that left circle, takes away the one-timer, the PK unit doesn't have to respect that pass. It's limiting Kucherov's options. So with that in mind, you've got Point, you've got Bjorkstrand. I think they've tried like both, where Point's in the middle, Bjorkstrand's at the circle, and then opposite. Based on what we saw last year from Bjorkstrand and what we know about Point, it would seem that the bumper is probably the preferred position for both of them, but somebody needs to be on that left side, one of them or somebody else. Do you have a sense of how this may play out, understanding that they're going to try it and see how it works? But would you like to see maybe one guy over the other at the Stamkos spot, we'll call it?
Well, I think back to where we were, and I think this was a question that I think has been being talked about for a year now. And I think at that time last year in training camp and preseason, we talked about Darren Radish being in that position, and we know you only have to go on NHL media and you can see how hard his shots are, and they're consistently in the top 10 of this guy's got a bomb. Mm-hmm. And obviously that didn't quite work out, him in that position. And I know that Cooch obviously feels very comfortable with there, and he's elite at that position, and the way he is able to see the ice and being a lefty on the right side and being open to the play and the playmaking abilities and what his outs are, and knowing it's going to be interesting for me to see kind of how Jeff Halpern puts this all together. And he talked about the pieces of the puzzle and fitting them together. So I don't know. I think maybe there's something that we can see that we haven't seen before. Maybe these guys are a little bit more, instead of having this like static type of setup where you have specific people in the bumper, specific people on that offside, on the left as the one-timer. Maybe these guys are hybrid positions of each other. They're moving around. They're finding different movements. So, but I think the biggest thing is that, with Cooch kind of orchestrating where people are, it really kind of allows the other four to really have maybe a little bit more movement. And the one thing I know about this team and know about Kucherov and Jeff Halpern specifically, who's been here and leading this power play for a lot of times, is they're going to try different things, and they're going to work it, and they're going to find what works and what doesn't. And I thought what was very interesting in his comments that you kind of alluded to was maybe more of an emphasis on, hey, like, yes, it's important to get power play goals and keep those numbers and statistics up, but how do we perform against the best penalty killers? And is that really the measuring stick that we are going to measure ourselves against all season long, about how effective our power play is? And is that the new metric, is instead of saying like, hey, we're a top 10 power play, but really like when the push comes to shove and we're playing the best penalty killers, where do we rank then? And maybe those are kind of what dictates our style of play on the power play.
Yeah, and the last question for me, and you would know this better than us, Kobe. To that point, and maybe you have to find some offense from some other people. He's always been a good power play producer. You played with him. I wonder if Victor Hedman becomes even more prominent on the power play with his one-timer because he can shoot the puck. The question is you got to get it on net, and it's so hard in today's game because you have players constantly blocking shots. But if you're trying to overcome, to a degree, Stamkos's one-timer, and you don't exactly have somebody at the forward position maybe who can do that, is Heddy more of an option to shoot the puck more because of how good he can shoot?
I think, yeah, Hetty does a really good job, and he has shown in the past of being that guy at the top. And it's not always the big booming slap shot.
Right.
Really, we see it. I'm just thinking of a guy like, let's say, Lane Hudson, who had an excellent rookie season last year. But by all accounts, this shot is not it's not hurting people per se. It's not gonna break too many foots like a Shea Weber or a Zdeno Chara slap shot. Really, the most important attribute of that guy at the top is to try to get the puck through traffic. Right. And you want to create those second chances, whether it's rebounds, tips, opportunities around the net. We know Gensel, this guy is one of the best around the net, whether it's tipping pucks, redirecting, walking the goal line. So you really want to make sure, if you look at the analytics of it, scoring from the blue line is very low in the percentages of what actually happens. So you have to understand with that, keeping that in mind, that the play is going to happen. The final play, the final touch is going to happen down around the crease area.
Kobe, you mentioned at the top of the conversation how much you love talking hockey, and I know you were just like a student of the game and you follow not just the Lightning but every team. Is there a team that is kind of caught your eye that you're interested to see this year that maybe might catch some people by surprise by doing better than what is expected?
Well, a couple things. I think who's going to take the step? And I think last year we were looking at Detroit. We were looking at Ottawa. We were looking at a couple different who else am I forgetting here? Philadelphia. I always kind of follow Philadelphia where they are in their rebuild. Who is going to take the step? It looked like the Ottawa Senators were the team that took the step. Detroit really didn't. I think what they've kind of been building just didn't come to fruition. What they thought with the team they had and the players they had. But so I'm looking at Ottawa, seeing what kind of next step they take. Another team in our Eastern Conference that I pay a lot of attention to is the New York Rangers. This is a team that really is 1 year removed from top of the Eastern Conference, President's Trophy, I believe, as well. And then they have a complete utter fall off. A little bit for me, reminiscent of when maybe we missed the playoffs. Is 2018, I believe.
17.
17, 18, yeah. And so what kind of bounce back is that team going to have? Because they still have pieces, Shesterkin, Fox, JT Miller, and these players coach. They have. Yeah. And so where are they going to be? It's very interesting to me to kind of watch and see what's happening in the New York Rangers and their organization and where they're going to be and who they're going to be challenging for at the top of the division. And I think a team that kind of came out of nowhere for me a little bit as far as their dominance and maybe their style of play was the Washington Capitals. They had just kind of, for whatever reason, everything kind of aligned for them last year. And they were kind of built from the back end out, a very big physical team that was not afraid to grind and really kind of pull out some tough wins. And you have this emotionally charged run where Ovechkin is chasing Gretzky's record, and you kind of have all the hoopla and the media attention that's surrounding that. So when you remove that, where are the Washington Capitals? Are they a contender or are they just a pretender from last year? So those are a couple storylines, and it's really, really hard for me just judging by stuff that I've seen in the first two preseason games. You can't really tell that yet, but just looking forward, those are the things that I'm watching kind of as we start moving into the first month of the season.
Well, Kobe, we appreciate this, and we look forward to having you on throughout the year, talking some good hockey. We'll watch you on TV Friday. That'll be a lot of fun, and we'll do it again real soon on this show.
Guys, well, thank you. I appreciate you guys and the passion that you guys bring to the game, and always interesting conversations. Love turning on the power lunch and listening to it. You guys offer, like I said, with perspective. I always appreciate and really kind of, except for some of the Pittsburgh takes there, Greg. I just, I everything about Pittsburgh, I still hate. It's just in my blood.
I get it. That Philly
orange in it. So
it's one of the best rivalries ever.
Yeah, but
We
I
appreciate
appreciate you guys and love what you're doing. So thank you so much.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Kobe.
Thanks, Kobe.
See you soon.
Appreciate you. Braydon Coburn coming on. And, when you think about the broadcasters that the Lightning do have and who we can speak to on our show to get that expertise, I think we're going to talk hopefully to Brian Engblom tomorrow. A lot of rings, a lot of guys.
And now
who play a
Pat
ton of
Maroon
games.
is a resource, which
How about that?
he never joined us as a player. Not that we don't get players usually.
We
Just
typically
when
don't
we're,
ask.
when we're on the air. It's
Yeah. In
it is
fairness,
a
we
little
typically don't
difficult.
ask.
We don't ask. But
Yeah.
what's interesting about the pregame show on the spot, it is similar to we have revamped kind of our pregame and intermission on Lightning Radio, and that you were kind of moderating, or quarterbacking a round table, and that's the way it's going to be with Paul Kennedy.
Yeah.
And he's going to have two analysts with him. It used to be only one. So the analysts can bounce ideas off each other.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it'll be good. Have some good debate and, talk about things that are pertinent to the team. And, of course, as you've seen by just kind of the reaction, us hopping on and doing our shows, I mean, there's a lot of people who want to know, Peltier, does he look good? Hope to see him on the fourth line.
Right.
Dave, that was Dave on YouTube. Tampa Bay also says, can Gage Gonsalves develop into a similar way as Brandon Hagel? I mean, that would be fantastic.
We'll see. I mean, I think Gage has a lot more writing in his story to do.
Yeah.
The biggest thing for me for a player like Gonsalves is that he continues to take a step forward.
Yes.
I mean, Kobe kind of talked about that team-wide. Like, he's like, can Ottawa take a step forward? The Rangers took a step back. Are they going to take a step forward? It's true for players, too. Gonsalves took a huge step forward last year. You want to see him. He maybe doesn't have to take as big of a leap forward, but continue to progress forward. And we'll see.
Timmy on Facebook says, so happy hockey is back. Any news on Vasi?
Like, I've been busy doing preseason games, so all I know is that he hasn't taken the ice. And until he does, or until we get information from the team, I don't think we have any updates for the fans.
Keep on keeping on.
Today is an off day, though.
Yeah.
So everybody's getting an off day, whether they played one, both, or none of the games the last 2 days.
Yeah. It is probably going to be the biggest. It is. It's the biggest topic right now for Tampa Bay when it comes to personnel and where they are. I think we all think it won't be a huge problem, but I think people aren't going to be settled down until they see him starting opening night.
Yeah.
And anything beyond that, partner, there's going to be panic in Tampa Bay. And that's where you and I are going to have to come on and say, look.
Well, I didn't mean to smile at the notion of people having panic.
No. But I think that's just kind of
that's what it means to be a
are.
fan, right? You're emotionally invested.
That is very true. So, Lenny, you're going to shift gears now back home for the preseason portion a little bit. A couple of road games here. I think they've, by all accounts, have acquitted themselves well. And now, maybe the third and fourth preseason games this weekend. You may see some NHLers you haven't seen through the first couple, and I think that'll be exciting. Typically, you wait for home games to have your star players get in there, right?
That, and also, or maybe not also, that's the wrong word, but keep in mind that the big round of cuts, that will not happen until I think after these two home games. So it's really mostly the team in the second week. So, yes, I think we're going to see probably more of the NHL regulars and maybe more of the stars in at least one of these two games this weekend.
Right.
But it's going to be after the second game, the Saturday game, that basically Syracuse will break off to start its own camp. And the Lightning will probably be at if they're going to keep 23, you're probably looking at 29, 30 into week 2, maybe a few less than that. It kind of depends on which players have caught the organization's eye and they're in contention for a spot here. And don't be fooled by the number on the roster that the Lightning may release, because that is going to include any injured player.
Correct.
So it's really how many healthy players are left. And then take that number and subtract to get to 23, and that's what you're going to have as far as remaining cuts.
Anthony says, I thought the team is playing like a team no matter who's in the lineup so far. Kachuk and Peltier are the most noticeable, and all the goalies played great. I think these two will start the year on the roster. Only fringe waiver exempt player is Geeky.
Well, we both feel Geeky's going to be on the team.
Totally.
I don't know if both are going to be on the opening night roster. They've had a good start to the preseason, but now they have to keep it going. And usually the decision to make the team or not make the team for a player like a Peltier or a Kachuk, usually it's contingent on how they do in week 2, to be perfectly honest. Mm-hmm. They've showed well. There's no question. And I think they showed well in the first game, which is why they dressed for the second game as well. Which is not to say that the players who showed well in Carolina who didn't dress in the second game were worse or anything like that. Coaches had their reasons for, or maybe it was the management said, we want to see these guys play again. But that is a very good sign for them. But ultimately, when you're down to that number of 27, 28, and you need to make those last few cuts, it's how do you do in the game in Orlando? How do you do in maybe the final preseason game at Florida a week from Saturday? That may be more of a determining factor.
Doug says, what happened to Connor Sherry?
He signed somewhere. Where did he sign?
Did he go to Europe? No. Let me check.
No, I think he's with an NHL team.
Rangers. Oh,
Rangers.
Well, that makes sense.
Yes.
Mike Sullivan.
Yeah.
Try to catch lightning in a bottle there.
Kobe's point is an interesting one. You would figure that the Rangers should be better than what they showed last year. They had, the wheels completely came off last year.
Big time.
Internal problems, controversial trades. Coach has to pay the price, maybe. But it wasn't just the coach. Trouba's gone. Kakko's gone. Kreider's gone. Keandre Miller's gone. They made some changes through last year and during the offseason. But Kobe is right. Adam Fox is an elite defenseman. He is still there. And, say what you will. Panarin, Zibanejad, they are big, big time players. So, JT Miller, he's a fantastic player.
A new voice behind the bench. But a new voice behind the bench.
And they have a new voice behind the bench who also probably wants to turn things around after a couple of tough years.
Yes.
I would expect they're going to be better.
Yeah.
But it's not the same team. It is not factually, literally the same team that they had 2 years ago. It is a much, much different team. And maybe that's going to help them, but it doesn't always work out that way. Having said that, I do think that they are more than likely a playoff team this year. And Kobe also brings up a good point about Washington. Everything fell into place for Washington last year, and part of it was the excitement of the Ovi chase, and they got off to a great start, and the coach was, they got behind I think he's a great coach, by the way, Spencer Carberry. So if he has anything to say about it, they're going to have their bedrock foundation of defending, which is really, I think, what helped them last year. But, Protas and McMichael did a lot of heavy lifting offensively. Remember we had Jack Michaels on after the Four Nations. He's like, are you kidding me? Who would have thought that Protas and McMichael would be 30 goals? How Jack gets animated. But his point is a good one. We just talked about Gonçalves. Are McMichael and Protas able to keep pushing the ball down the field, right? Are they going to be contributing at that level? Because Ovi is 40. Ovi no longer has a record to chase. He may be as effective as he was last year, but who knows? So I think if Washington is going to kind of do what they did last year, it's going to be about their big defense, their sound system, defending, and getting contributions. Basically, I mean, it can't just be one or two guys. I think that's kind of how they're going to have to do it, but they're going to have to go out and show it, because I can tell you this, Greg, the Rangers are like, we are getting back in. And the Devils, who had a great year 2 years ago and then last year didn't, they're like, we want to get back in, right? Or it was 2 years ago. They had their great year. But, you know, they had a lot of injuries last year. The Luke Hughes situation is still up in the air. They need that guy. But you know what I'm saying? Like, there are some teams that are maybe like, hey, we want to get back in the party. Let us in. Or we want to get into the party, like Columbus last year, which was right there to the very end. So I think the pressure is on Washington they don't have to have the same season they had last year, but you know, they can't let things drop off too much. How much of last year was just like everything fell into place, and how much of it was they like set the foundation for really solid play moving forward as an organization?
Makes sense. Makes sense. We'll see how that plays out. Long way to go, but we'll be here for it all. Partner, great job as always. I will talk to you tomorrow, talking a little more hockey.
Yeah, we'll be back tomorrow. Team's back on the ice tomorrow, too.
Yeah.
Getting ready for the two preseason games at home.
Noon to 1. Hopefully we'll have Brian Engblom on. Thanks to Steve Versnick and Braydon Coburn for hopping on today. And we'll be with you again tomorrow. I'm Greg Linnelli. You've been listening to Power Lunch on Lightning Radio.